Mimir gods that Kratos has killed in God of War, and who are they? The character, who's always got something wise to say, Mimir, is found by Kratos chained to a tree after attempting to trick Odin. While it's kind of cheating, Kratos does kill Mimir by cutting his head off. However, the wise advisor is later revived by Freya and becomes the third member to join the Kratos traveling party. Mimir in Norse mythology means someone that is wise and has a lot of knowledge. Similar to the game, the figure is beheaded by the Vanir Gods, and that head was gifted to Odin. Odin revived the head, wearing it on his side, with the head often repeating secret knowledge to him. Norse mythology. Mimir, meaning the rememberer or the wise one in Old Norse, is a figure in Norse mythology who is renowned for his knowledge and wisdom. He is beheaded by the Vanir Gods during the Æsir-Vanir War. Odin revives the head of Mimir through some magic after the Vanir gifted to Odin. Afterward, Odin carries around Mimir's head and it recites secret knowledge to him. He is the maternal uncle of Odin. In the God of War series. Background. Hailing from a faraway land, Mimir was a fairy king's errand boy and unofficial jester. Frequently, Mimir and other fairies, nicknamed Goodfellows, would walk amongst mortals to sow mischief, and as long as his lord was kept amused, they were spared the consequences. Eventually, Mimir's king grew weary of his antics, forcing him to leave his homeland. After many years traveling north, Mimir eventually ended up in the Nine Realms and learned of Odin, king of the Æsir. Determined to prove his worth, Mimir approached Odin and provided him with Mimisbrunn, a supposed mystical well of knowledge, which was actually a well of water laced with enough mystic mushrooms to make a god see visions. Despite Odin tearing out one of his eyes after imbibing of the hallucinogen, Mimir claimed the All-Father was bestowed with greater sight and was hired as Odin's primary advisor and ambassador to all the other realms. By his own admission, his job was initially to enable Odin, though over time, he began to become concerned with the well-being of ordinary people and the world in general and sought to contain the All-Father whenever possible. Unlike the Æsir, Mimir sought to establish peace between the realms, as he believed it was the best plan to avert Ragnarok. However, Odin rarely listened to such advice and often led many wars, particularly with the Vanir and the giants. When the war with the Vanir caused unprecedented devastation and left both sides weary, Mimir suggested a truce. Odin would marry his deadliest enemy, the leader of the Vanir, the goddess Freya. After much convincing, Odin and Freya agreed to the terms, thus ending the war. Over time, Mimir grew to befriend many giants from Jotunheim to the point where he was bestowed with Bifrost crystals in his eyes. Because Mimir spent so much time traveling through realms, they believed it would be more convenient than a crystal he could lose. To numb the pain of the procedure, Mimir drank 16 cups of Billow Maiden's ale. So inebriated, Mimir almost convinced the giants to put the crystals in his nipples instead, jokingly calling himself Mimir of the Bifrost teats. However, Mimir's efforts to preserve peace would be stymied by Odin's paranoia, his obsessions with prophecies, and allowing his son, Thor, to go on a killing spree on the giants. Thus, much like with Tyr, Odin confronted Mimir, suspecting that he aided the giants. As punishment, Odin imprisoned him on Midgard's highest peak, bound to a tree made indestructible even to Thor's hammer. As additional punishment, Odin removed the horned god's bejeweled left eye and hid it to keep Mimir from traveling to other realms. Mimir then realized that Odin had never been fooled from the drugged well incident where they first met. Mimir would spend the next century being tortured by Odin himself on a daily basis, eventually making him yearn for death, for Odin's torment rendered Mimir's bound existence anything but living. God of War, 2018. 109 winters following his imprisonment, Baldur, along with his nephews, Thor's sons Magni and Modi, confronted him and attempted to bribe him with freedom in exchange for revealing whereabouts of a tattooed man traveling with a child. Despite their promises, Mimir refused to aid them, Not only was the bound god unable to locate the pair due to a concealing rune placed on them by a witch, but he also knew that Odin would not allow anyone to either release or harm his former advisor. As such, Mimir bitterly stated that they had nothing to offer him and spitefully demanded Baldur to take his questions, threats, and the two worthless wankers and leave. Before leaving, Modi promised to be back for Mimir's other eye when no authorities were watching. Almost immediately after the trio left, a tattooed man and a boy revealed themselves to him, Kratos and his son Atreus. As Kratos sent his son away to check if the Æsir had doubled back, Mimir remarked that Atreus was unaware of his father's true nature as a god. He then proceeded to introduce himself to Kratos. Upon boasting he could answer any questions they ask, he was a bit stumped to answer why Baldur was hunting them, admitting there were a few gaps in his knowledge, but insisted he could figure it out eventually. When Atreus described their journey to the tallest peak in all the 9 realms, Mimir clarified that Atreus was mistaken about choosing Midgard's tallest peak, as the tallest peak in all of the realms was actually in Jotunheim, the inaccessible realm of the giants. With his remaining right eye, Mimir projected a magical picture of the tallest peak of Jotunheim through the stone pillars behind them, the last known gate to said realm. He further explains that, among all the living, he is the only one who knows how to gain entrance, as only he can talk to the only giant left who knows. In return for aiding the duo, Mimir asks Kratos to cut off his head and bring it to someone with skill in the old magic in order to reanimate him. Kratos warns Mimir of the consequences should they fail, to which Mimir explains that after over 109 years of torture, his current state is not living at all. Kratos agrees to do so, but Atreus cannot bear to watch and leaves, and when he does so, Mimir, just in case his death is permanent, tells Kratos that he must reveal his past to Atreus, and the longer he waits, the more likely Atreus will grow resentful of him. Kratos then cuts off his head, temporarily killing him. A long length of vine, sliced in the blow, falls alongside the head from the tree. Kratos ties it around Mimir's head and horns so it can be hung from his belt. It's implied that during his temporary death, Mimir's soul ended up traveling to Helheim. The experience was apparently deeply traumatizing to him, as he mentions that he had hoped to never see the dreaded realm again when he and Kratos travel there to save Atreus. His lifeless head is brought over to the Witch of the Wood's home, where she reanimates him using the old magic. It is quickly revealed that the two have a bad relationship, culminating with Mimir's face being spat on by the witch. Mimir also reveals her identity as the Vanir goddess Freya, and in return learns that she never revealed it to Atreus and Kratos. An infuriated Kratos admonishes her, keeping her godhood a secret from them. However, Freya berates Kratos with the irony that he was also keeping his secret from his son and warns Kratos that Odin's wrath will be coming quickly now that he has freed Mimir. Growling, Kratos storms out of Freya's home without thanking her. Mimir then becomes part of the traveling company of the Spartan and his son, lending his considerable knowledge of the realms, insight on the depraved, violent nature of the Æsir gods and of the tragedies caused by wars throughout the ages. He also tries to mend the strained relationship between the father and the son. At some point in their journey, Atreus tried inquiring why Freya spat in Mimir's face, but was overruled by his father, who wanted to know how Baldur was invulnerable. Mimir answered that Baldur was invulnerable to all threats, physical or magical, but his words were dismissed by Kratos, who insists that every god had a weakness. Mimir then denied it and repeated the same words from before, which confused Atreus. Curious to learn how they came to cross Baldur, Mimir learned that the painless Æsir showed up at their door and started a fight. Kratos mentioned that Baldur claimed to know what he was and suggests that the latter mistook him for another. With nothing but theories to go on, Mimir suggested that Odin sent Baldur after them in hopes of finding a way to Jotunheim. Arriving back at the Lake of the Nine, Mimir had Kratos hold him up to the horn to summon Jormungandr, who immediately devoured a large stone statue of Thor upon waking up. Speaking to the world serpent in his native tongue, Mimir got Jormungandr to recognize him, but mistakenly identified Kratos and Atreus as friends of Odin before hurriedly correcting himself, explaining their intent. Thus, Jormungandr realigned the bridge and caused the water level in the lake to drop even further. Mimir explained to the father and son that they required both a special travel rune to carve into the gate at the summit and a magical chisel to activate it. Choosing to go for the latter first, Mimir guided his companions to the corpse of the giant Thamur, where they had a violent confrontation with Magni and Modi, ending with Kratos killing Magni, forcing his half-brother to retreat. Mimir became concerned when Atreus displayed symptoms of a sickness and insisted they take him to Freya, but the boy dismissed both his and Kratos' concerns. Kratos then broke off a piece of Thamur's chisel. Description: when he is first found, Mimir is shown to be embedded within and partially merged into a tree. He has 2 small horns on his head and a growing, grey beard. The crown of his head is covered in runic tattoos, and his lower lip is tattooed with a pattern, trailing down from the sides of his mouth and ending just above his beard. He is missing one of his glowing, golden eyes. He eventually is decapitated by Kratos and brought back to life, though he still looks the same. While dead, his eye glow fades and reveals his pale yellow iris. Later, Kratos and Atreus retrieve Mimir's other eye, and put it back in his head, and find that it still works. During battles, Mimir serves as a second pair of eyes for Kratos, normally alarming the Spartan that an enemy is attacking from one of his blind spots.